Sonic the Hedgehog is easily one of the greatest and most iconic video game characters of all time. This blue speedster came to everyone in 1991, and ever since then he's been just as popular as ever. Even though he's had a few rough patches in his entire life, let's just safe to say that Sonic the Hedgehog will never die of popularity, with most fans loving the games, the shipping wars being some of the funniest things and most toxic things you'll ever see in the Sonic fandom or any fandom in general. But that just goes to show you how much people love Sonic the Hedgehog and how passionate the fans can get. For me, I'm definitely someone who's passionate about Sonic, maybe not as much as I am towards like someone like Sly Cooper or Waluigi for that matter, but I definitely say Sonic is definitely up there as one of my favorite video game characters of all time. And today, we're going to be discussing what I think are the greatest Sonic the Hedgehog video games ever created. Hey everyone, my name is Lancey, and to those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. To those of you who have already been here before, welcome back. And we're going to discuss Sonic the Hedgehog today. Hey guys, it's just a little disclaimer for the video here. I'm just going to focus on the main games for Sonic the Hedgehog, so no spin-offs are allowed. That may be a video for itself for another day, but I just want to focus on the main series games right now. So, and aside from that, that's the only real disclaimer that I have. So, let's get to it. Number 10. Sonic Adventure, originally released in 1998. In an attempt to bring Sonic to the 3D world and 3D platforming game, especially on the new console that just recently came out, the Dreamcast, the Sonic team decided to make Sonic Adventure. Now this game, despite the flaws that it has in terms of the mechanics and the gameplay, this game is still a whole lot of fun to play in my opinion. It has an enticing story for every character you play as. The graphics, at least at the time, were considered to be some of the greatest you'll ever see in a video game. Obviously, times have changed since then, but still, it's to be put out there though. On top of that, the fact that they still kept the linear style of gameplay, even though they brought it to the 3D platforming, was such a smart choice by the developers because it wasn't a game that you had to like sit down and think thoroughly through it. It was still Sonic the Hedgehog, just made 3D. Also, the soundtrack in here is actually pretty good. Every character has a song in here that is dedicated to them and it works perfectly for them. But I'll talk more a bit about the soundtracks for the video games probably in another video, but who knows. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Sonic Adventure, it can be a bit of a mess at times, but it's a beautiful mess. A beautiful mess that still works for what it is. And as I said before, the story's great, the ending's great. And for a first attempt at a 3D platforming game for Sonic, I say that Sega did a great job with it, at least for what it was at the time. You ask any fan nowadays, the game, it definitely did age poorly, but that's just because of how advanced technology's gotten over the years. If you're just sitting down and judging this game based off of like itself as a whole, I truly think that Sonic Adventure still holds up as a pretty good Sonic game in my opinion. Number 9. Sonic Colors, released in 2010. Considering what Sonic the Hedgehog went through during the mid-2000s, and I feel like that alone could be a topic itself for a video that I could do another day. But considering what Sonic the Hedgehog went through with the mid-2000s, Sonic Colors was a great return to form for Sonic the Hedgehog. Unlike previous releases, Sonic is the only playable character in this game, which may be a detriment to some fans who love playing as characters like Tails, Amy, Shadow, Knuckles, and all them, but due to the criticisms of the past previous games, the developers decided to make Sonic the only playable character in this game. The story then follows Sonic and Tails as they both try to stop Eggman, who's harnessing the power of these little aliens called the Wisps, so that he can use their energy for mind control and take over the whole world. The graphics, the gameplay, the soundtrack, and the fact that this game can be played over and over again and you still wouldn't get bored of it, it's just a prime example of how great this game was and how much it stood out, especially at a time where Sonic the Hedgehog games were just not in a good light at all. This was one of the last few Sonic games that came out on the Wii, and it definitely made its mark on the Wii still. And I think it's one of the few games that a lot of people will still play if they still have the Wii. All I know is that with Sonic Colors, it was a great return to form for a brief period of time for Sonic, and on top of that, it also sold 4 million copies worldwide, so that just shows you how popular this game was and probably still is. Number 8. Sonic Rush, originally released in 2005. If I had to pick which small console game was my favorite for Sonic, I'd definitely say Sonic Rush was definitely my favorite of the bunch. Even though I do love Sonic Advance, I just think that Sonic Rush had that formula down packed. The game is fast paced, it feels like the old Sonic games, it's also, the visuals as always is great, the music is great in there too. On top of that, we get to play with Blaze, so it's just, this game to me is overall fun. Also, the story in here is very unique too, with Blaze trying to find the Soul Emeralds and her and Sonic teaming up at certain points and then fighting each other at certain points. And it's just, and then Cream gets involved too. The whole story is just original and unique for what it was, and it puts a smile on my face every time I watch and play this game. And in fact, this game got so popular, it got a sequel in 2007. But in my opinion, nothing beats the original. So definitely play Sonic Rush if you're looking for a good Sonic game to pass the time with. Number 7. Sonic the Hedgehog, originally released in 1991. The very first ever Sonic the Hedgehog game, and to me, it still holds up to this day, because 1, it's a simple gameplay style, 2, it had 2 characters that you had to focus on. It wasn't like this overarching story that you had to worry about. It was just Sonic the Hedgehog and Dr. Robotnik, aka Dr. Eggman. On top of that, the gameplay was simple. You just had to collect the Chaos Emeralds in between the missions and then reach the end of the stage each and every time. So, Sonic the Hedgehog tried its best to replicate the Mario formula, but to me, it was how they went about that formula that they had that ended up evolving into something bigger and bigger. And little did the Sonic team know at the time that Sonic would become one of the biggest video game characters in history. So overall, I say this game makes this list because it's a landmark in pop culture, and on top of that, the gameplay is still fun. It's simple, yes. It's fast-paced, yes. But that's what makes Sonic so much fun. The simple, fast gameplay that most fans, I think, miss in some of the new Sonic games nowadays. Number 6. Sonic CD, originally released in 1993. This game introduces one of my favorite Sonic characters of all time, Amy Rose. Now, yes, I know, I already hear the comment section typing away, but yes, Amy Rose is easily one of my favorite Sonic characters of all time. And I know what people are gonna probably say in the comment section, but I'll have a whole separate video about why I think Amy is a great Sonic character. But let's just we're talking about the games, let's talk about the game instead. So, what makes this game great? First off, it's the same formula as the previous Sonic games that came out before it. Only difference is it expanded on its storytelling elements a bit, and it had this very cool thing that you could do, which was time travel. Whether it be in the future or in the past, and depending on what you do in the future or past, could affect everything and what you do. So, even though Sonic the Hedgehog games are not, they are not like shy about trying different endings for people. Even the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, there's 2 different endings. Whether or not you beat Eggman, or whether or not Eggman still has the Chaos Emeralds, that's all that matters. So, but in this game, there's like multiple ways to get different endings. So, this is one of the games where you could actually have to sit down and like try to figure out what to do and what not to do. On top of that, you have Metal Sonic, who's giving Sonic a hard problem already. And then, Tails is there helping too. It's just, Sonic CD is another great game, in my opinion, and one that introduced that type of gameplay that would go to define Sonic for a few more years. Even though I won't say it's the best Sonic game, it's definitely one of the best ones in the entire franchise. And on top of that, it's the very first Sonic the Hedgehog game to have actual animated cutscenes going for it. Number 5. Sonic Generations, released in 2011. Following the success of Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations came out, and boy was it a great game to play. This is a Sonic game that was made for both old and new Sonic fans, combining the best of both worlds. You got the classic Sonic and then modern Sonic. Following the ending of what happened in Sonic Colors, Dr. Eggman found a Time Eater in outer space and decided to use it to go back in time and team up with his classic self, and the two decide to work together to erase their past defeats in the history. So, as usual, Sonic has to figure out how to stop Dr. Eggman, and he gets to come across his old version of himself, classic Sonic. This game was a huge love letter to Sonic fans all over the world, and it was a love letter for the longest time before another game that I'm about to talk about in a second kind of stole that spotlight. But the way I see it, Sonic Generations was definitely a fun game for every Sonic fan out there because it still maintained that old style of Sonic while also maintaining the new style of Sonic. It just blended the elements perfectly, and as usual, the soundtrack is great. The animations and visuals is great. The gameplay is still pretty good too. Sonic Generations, to me, it just built off that success that Sonic Colors had. And again, it's a bright spot at a time where Sonic was really trapped in between two dark periods. Number 4. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, released in 1992. Given how successful the very first Sonic the Hedgehog game was, a sequel was inevitable. And thus, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released 1 year later. This game is memorable for a lot of fans because it introduced one of the most popular Sonic characters of all time, Miles Prower, aka Tails, a two-tailed fox who is intelligent as all heck and is Sonic's sidekick, although I like to consider him more as a partner rather than a sidekick. This was the very first Sonic game to introduce co-op, and boy was it a lot of fun, because you could either be single player and play as both Sonic and Tails, or you can play with your brother, your sister, or whoever, and just play as one plays Sonic and the other plays as Tails. So this game introduced the co-op feature, and this game would definitely set the mark for how future Sonic games would take after the co-op feature. And considering there's another Sonic game I'm about to talk about with that feature too, it's definitely a landmark in history. So Sonic the Hedgehog 2, same thing as the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, nothing really spectacular. You just gotta stop Dr. Eggman and collect all the Chaos Emeralds too. And on top of that, this is the introduction to one of the most powerful beings in the Sonic universe, Super Sonic. Sonic's super version that is nearly invincible, can run faster, jump farther, much stronger, but he still needs rings in order to maintain his super status. So anytime Sonic runs out of rings, his super status comes to an end, and you'll have to collect the Chaos Emeralds again and have enough rings so that you can turn back into Super Sonic. So as usual, the story is simple but great, the characters are great, the new gameplay styles you have is great. On top of that, the level design is still pretty good too. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a great Sonic game, and to me it's definitely better than the first one, and I like it slightly better than Sonic CD, only by a tiny bit. It could really go back and forth between the two. Number 3. Sonic Mania, released in 2017. Remember how I talked about the two dark periods that Sonic the Hedgehog had? Well, those dark periods was basically the mid-2000s and the mid-2010s. Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog was going through so much turmoil at the time, and fans and critics alike both thought that the franchise was gonna die without any chance of revival whatsoever. But Sega refuses to quit on anything, and Sega decided to release a game called Sonic Mania, which they said was gonna be basically the old formula to the Sonic games, which was much to the delight of a lot of critics and a lot of fans. So, this game basically is like a sequel to Sonic and Knuckles 3, in which the three of them try to stop Dr. Eggman from taking over the planet once again. And like a series of events happen in this game afterwards, which is kind of crazy, but it's kind of hard to explain at the same time. So if you watch gameplay of it online, I'm sure watching someone else do the gameplay of it will do it more justice than what I could probably do it. But yeah, Sonic Mania, the way this game just like stuck to the guns of what made Sonic so much fun in the 90s and early 2000s, this Sonic Mania is easily a love letter to a lot of Sonic fans from old. Because again, you know, Sonic was going through such, and I mean such, a bad period of time in the 2010s. With games like Sonic Boom, Rise of the Lyric, Sonic Lost World, Sonic Forces. I mean, it was rough and go for a while for Sonic. But Sonic Mania managed to bring the series back a bit with that 2D style of gameplay, which I know a lot of fans love and still dearly love to this day. This game managed to bring Sonic back to a lot of fans' eyes, and it would slowly start to be like the beginning of a Sonic renaissance that most fans probably did not see coming, with some of the new games finally starting to be good again, and then the Sonic movie franchise, which initially was about to be trashed completely because of the original Sonic design, before it was thankfully saved by the developers who listened to the fans. It's just safe to say that I think this game really saved Sonic's reputation, and afterwards it's just been a renaissance for Sonic, one that the character desperately needed after years and years of growing pain. Number 2. Sonic Adventure 2, released in 2001. This isn't the best Sonic game, but it's easily one of the best ones. I dare to say it's top 3 all time easily, and this is my personal favorite Sonic game. Sonic Adventure 2 perfected the formula that Sonic Adventure had, while also still maintaining the old school style of Sonic from the 1990s that most fans loved. Also, we get the introduction to one of the greatest Sonic characters of all time, Shadow the Hedgehog. As usual in the story, Sonic is trying to stop Eggman from taking over the world, but Shadow gets thrown in the mix, and even though it seems like Shadow is trying to help Eggman, Shadow has his own little plan to get back at the world that Eggman has no idea about, and just shows you how powerful and ahead of time the Ultimate Life Form really is. Unlike the previous Sonic Adventure game, this game introduced the 2 teams that you can play as. As to where with Sonic Adventure you play as the characters individually, this game you could play as 2 different teams. There was the Hero Team and then the Dark Team. So the Hero Team has Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, aka Team Sonic originally. And then the Dark Team has Shadow, also newcomer Rouge, and then Dr. Eggman working together. And basically this game tells 2 different stories, but they're all leading towards the same end product. And also, Amy Rose gets thrown in this story too, because she does play a vital part in this game. I don't care what any hater says. Yes, she has a vital part in this game. The one thing that really stuck out to me the most about Sonic Adventure 2 is how it handled the story and how it handled all the characters with each story that it was trying to tell. It's like how they were able to just manage 6 different stories from 6 different perspectives to still go towards the final end goal, and still manage to make such a cohesive and fun game is beyond me, but it just showed you how much talent and effort Sega Team really has to put out a game like this. And also, this soundtrack is by far the best soundtrack in my opinion for any Sonic game, because every character has such a theme dedicated to them that it just works perfectly for what they are. Whether it be like Sonic with the rock theme, Shadow with that electronic rock theme, and then, you know, Knuckles with the rap theme, Rouge with the jazzy theme. It just, the way that Sega just made every character feel important to itself and not just like another knockoff to another character, just was a great touch that they had, and it adds so much charm to this game. And also, the story here is easily the best story of any Sonic game in my opinion. A story that still feels pretty lighthearted but has a lot of dark elements to it that I think fans will be able to take and understand. Almost like how Sly 2 was like a lighthearted story that still had dark elements to it. That's how I feel with Sonic Adventure 2. I could ramble on and on about this game, and I still feel like I wouldn't be able to do it justice. So just take my word for it. Sonic Adventure 2 is one of the best Sonic games of all time, and one of the best video games, period, in my opinion. Alright guys, so before we get into the number one spot, it's very clear that we have to have honorable mentions for this list, because there are so many Sonic games out there that limiting it to just 10 would have been a disservice to all the other Sonic games that I actually thought are pretty good too. So here's what I think are games that could have made the top 10 list but just missed the mark. Sonic Heroes, released in 2003. Easily the most lighthearted Sonic game you'll ever find. This game was a lot of fun, getting to play all 4 different teams, and how like the fan base for Shadow was so huge that he ended up making this game. Sonic Heroes is just a great game overall to me. And again, it can be a bit of a mess, but it's a beautiful mess in my opinion. Sonic Frontiers, released in 2022. This was a huge return to form for Sonic in my opinion. This game achieved a lot of great things. Yes, it still has its flaws, but it's the best Sonic game we've had in a long time, guys. I'm talking like Sonic Mania long. The Sonic Advance series. The Sonic Advance series is a pretty good set of games actually. It can be stale for Sonic fans because it does maintain that 90s style of Sonic, but to me, it's very fast paced, and I couldn't decide which Sonic Advance game was better than the other ones. You know, the consensus is that the first one is the best and the second one's the worst, but I can't really decide which game was better or worse than the other, so I just put the whole trilogy in here. Sonic Unleashed, released in 2008. This is easily one of the most divisive Sonic games, I think, aside from another game, but I just think that Sonic Unleashed achieved an element of Sonic that I think than what most fans and critics actually give it credit for. And we are down to the final entry, guys. The number one spot, which is always the most anticipated spot for any of these top 10 lists. So, for Sonic fans, I think Sonic fans know what game I'm about to say, because it's literally the only game that I have not talked about yet. And it's the one game that made Sonic so beloved by a lot of people. So, the number one greatest Sonic game of all time is Sonic 3 and Knuckles, released in 1994. Knock knock, it's Knuckles, easily one of the most badass characters in the Sonic franchise. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is easily the best game in the entire Sonic universe. Reasons being because this game wasn't even supposed to be the way it was supposed to be initially. It was supposed to be Sonic 3 and then a separate game called Sonic and Knuckles. But because the developers ran out of time, they decided to combine both games into one, and thus Sonic 3 and Knuckles was created. Oh man, what a game this was. The level designs are some of the most memorable level designs you'll ever see in a Sonic game. On top of that, the story is great too. You have Knuckles the Echidna, who's trying to get at Sonic because he thinks Sonic has the emeralds, even though it's Eggman who's like tricking Knuckles into doing these things, and it's just so much elements being thrown at you that this game itself is just so awesome. And also, it's another great soundtrack here too. The lock-on technology feature was an added bonus, which made the game much better for a lot of fans out there. All the hidden stages and bosses we could battle to in this game, this game is just amazing, and it's the game that really pushed Sonic to the stratosphere of video game culture. And to this very day, only a seldom few Sonic games can hold even a candlestick to what Sonic 3 and Knuckles was. And it's with that we gotta juice it and cut it loose. Okay, that was corny as heck. But yeah, okay, so that's basically the video, guys. As usual, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for showing the support. Sonic easily is in my heart as one of my favorite, not even favorite video game character, but one of my favorite characters in fiction, period, because I love the shows he has too, with Sonic X, Sonic Boom, and then Sonic Prime being really good too. It's just Sonic will always have a place in my heart. And if you like this video and you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and follow me for more content like this every week or so. Trying to get a video out every week or two now, guys. So again, my schedule is pretty busy, but let's just watch for a video at least every 2 weeks or so. So yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, it's your boy Lancey, and I'll see you guys in the next video that I do. Don't know what it's gonna be yet, but it's gonna be something. So peace out, guys.